Hello everyone, welcome to the third year of Clown Decade. The decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. Lucky for you, I've got 3 examples of exactly what I mean. And as is the nature of these things, I will go from the least worst to the worst. The least worst in this case being this article, Sasha Johnson, 4 cleared over shooting of activist. Yes, the least worst is a case where people literally got away with putting a innocent woman in a coma for over half a year. For those wondering what exactly happened, I did make a video 8 months ago covering the situation, link is in the description as usual. And for those that want a quick summary, Sasha Johnson is a Black Lives Matter activist who created or co-founded the Taking the Initiative party, which is a small London-based activist group and isn't that different to Labour's Momentum, but is actually probably a lot more focused on racial politics than Momentum. And a few months after she made the news for calling people interviewing her on our positions racial slurs because they were black but being quote-unquote white, she was randomly shot in the head at a party where 4 men in balaclavas raided and started shooting in the crowd from the sounds of it. And of course it's a horrible thing to happen to her. But let's get into the article and find out how these men got away with it. 4 suspects charged over the shooting of the Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson have been cleared after the case against them collapsed. Johnson, 28, was shot in the head at a birthday party in May last year and remains in hospital after suffering catastrophic permanent damage. Yeah, pretty horrible. Getting shot in the head is never going to be nice. She is a founding member of the Taking the Initiative party and had been a prominent figure in the Black Lives Matter movement last summer. After the shooting, police said they did not believe she was the intended target. Which honestly I can believe. From what I remember of the story, it was suspected that it was some drug gang incident that she unfortunately was collateral damage of. 4 men were arrested after the attack in Peckham, South London. Prince Dixon, 25, of Gravesend, Kent. Troy Reed, 20, of Southwark. Cameron Derriggs, 19, of Lewisham. And Devontae Brown, 19, of Southwark. All denied conspiracy to murder. They also pleaded not guilty to a charge of possession of a firearm and ammunition with intent to endanger life. After the hearing yesterday, the Old Bailey heard that the Crown Prosecution Service would no longer be pursuing the case. Prosecutor Mark Haywood QC said the case against the defendants was based on circumstantial evidence and there was no direct evidence identifying any of them. I believe the main issue with that being is that they all turned up in balaclavas. Given the UK is basically the biggest surveillance state in the world with over 5 million CCTV cameras throughout the country, most of them being in London, it's actually amazing that they couldn't identify them. And how a gun can go off at a party and absolutely no one can identify either who shot it or how the gun can't be traced back to someone in London is actually beyond me. I don't understand how this has happened. But it appears that basically someone somewhere has got away with basically ending someone's life. Because Sasha Johnson isn't going to be the same person after. And I don't care how bad of a person she was. Something like this is not what you deserve. The defendants appeared by video link from Belmarsh High Security Prison for the hearing before Mr Justice Hilliard. Formal non-guilty verdicts were recorded because the prosecution offered no evidence. Useless prosecution then. The case collapsed after a secret notification hearing, a process that can be used to protect undercover agents. The only previously known case heard the procedure could be used to protect a CHRIS, Covert Human Intelligence Source, an acronym that gained prominence in The Line of Duty, a popular BBC crime drama. Thanks, Times. Haywood said it is no longer possible to say the full test required by the prosecution code remains satisfied, as it must be if this is to proceed to trial. For very good reasons, it is not possible to set out in open court, the reasons it is so. So to give a bit of leeway here, this isn't actually as clown world as I first thought, or at least might not be. It appears that basically they can't prosecute these guys because to get the witnesses and testimonies they need in there to prosecute these guys means that they might have to make sacrifices on bigger busts further down the line. To put it in other words, the police have a mole in a gang somewhere that they think these 4 men were involved in, and that mole probably could get these guys prosecuted, but then their undercover work would have to come to an end, and clearly they think something big is going to come from that undercover work. It's either that or they're trying to find a very good reason for the Crown Prosecution Service to be incredibly incompetent. Which, by the way, is a perfectly reasonable assumption because Keir Starmer was in charge of the CPS while they weren't prosecuting Jimmy Savile. But apparently that's a right-wing conspiracy, even though it's true. Anyway, that was an excuse to get you an update on Sasha Johnson. It appears the Crown Prosecution Service is either being incredibly competent for once, or is being incredibly incompetent and finding reasons for it again. Only time will tell. But now we're moving away from London out to Wales. And you might be thinking, how bad can universal suffrage really get? And then you find this webpage from the Electoral Commission. Can a foreign national register to vote? And given that it's on the Electoral Commission's website, the obvious answer is yes. The Senedd, yes you do say it's Senedd, I've been learning a tiny bit of Welsh pronunciation recently, and Elections Wales Act 2020 extends the franchise to include qualifying foreign nationals for Senedd elections. And the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021 extends the franchise to qualifying foreign nationals for local government elections held on or after 5 May 2022. Oh boy. So this basically means that non-Welsh nationals have a perfectly legitimate vote in the Welsh Senedd elections, with the plan being rather obvious: import as many foreign nationals as you can, tell them that you are the reason they are there, and they will get more people like you over if you vote for us, the Labour Party. Horrifying stuff that's been in the talks for quite some time, but it's only just now coming to fruition, and come May, you'll see a rather large spike in the turnout for the Welsh elections, I imagine. So let's get into detail on this. The entry in the combined registers of a qualifying foreign citizen must give an indication of that fact. Electors of any nationality are eligible to register to vote in the Senedd elections and local government elections, providing they meet the age and residency requirements and that they are not legally incapable of voting. So basically you've got to not be a criminal in the UK, and you have to have a permanent residency address in the UK. Those two are fairly simple. When it comes to age, I also want to go through this. At what age can someone register to vote? A person aged 16 or over on the relevant date who meets the residency qualification and is not subject to any legal incapacity to vote is entitled to be included on the local government register. However, an elector must be 18 to be included in the UK parliamentary register. So basically Wales are saying all the young and all the foreigners can vote in our country. The reason being is that they mostly vote Labour. Who is in power right now? Labour. This means that the local government register will include 16 and 17-year-olds as full electors. 16 and 17-year-olds are entitled to vote in the Senedd elections, and also in local government elections held on or after the 5th of May 2022. Additionally, 15-year-olds and some 14-year-olds are entitled to be included on the register as attainers, and that's just so when they turn 16, they'll be able to vote. If, say, they turn 16 on the day of election, that means they're pre-registered so they can get the vote. Either way, we're getting closer and closer to Adam Friended's utopia of 12-year-olds being able to vote. But really, when it comes to selecting an age for people to vote, it's basically always going to be arbitrary. I'm actually in favour of raising the age from 18 to 21, and even more in favour of having it so you need to earn your vote in some way, a la Starship Troopers. Obviously, that's never going to happen, so I'm going to have to live with arguing to raise the voting age. But no, in the real world, we have basically anyone in the entire world who has any permanent residency in Wales is able to vote in local elections and the Senedd. Thank God they can't vote in the Parliament elections, and hopefully they never will. We need to roll back these ridiculous expansions of the franchise, because already too many people are able to vote, in my opinion. Because quite frankly, everyone is just going to try and vote for exactly what they want, and then it gets everyone in the mindset of, oh, it's the government's job to fix my life, I'm going to vote for it once every 4 or 5 years. And in the result of doing that, they come out with ridiculous laws, and as of now we are moving over to Scotland for their new ridiculous policies. SNP sex guidance effectively lowers the age of consent to 13, says campaigners, and not long after they'll probably lower the vote to that age. The Scottish Government now recommends police officers, teachers and social workers should not automatically inform parents if their child is having sex before the age of 16. Which is just one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in my life. This effectively puts children more in care of the state than of their parents when it comes to their sexual activities, which is obviously ridiculous. The SNP-run Scottish Government has effectively lowered the age of consent in Scotland to just 13 by campaigners. New guidance for police, teachers and social workers states that parents should not be automatically told if their children are having sex before the age of 16. Well, I've already said that's ridiculous. Instead, the policy says that if a young person is in a safe and mutually respectful relationship, their confidentiality should be respected. Ugh, grim. The change has been blasted by family campaigners and the Catholic Church. Thank God for that, the Catholics are finally doing something good. The row follows on from the controversy surrounding the SNP's hated sex survey for school children, and for those of you that missed the video I covered on that basically asks 14-year-olds if they have been bummed. No, I am not joking. But that is really disgusting. You're under 16 and you're in a quote-unquote safe and mutually respectful relationship, or however they put it. Just the whole point is that kids under 16 are too young to know what either of those things really mean. And if one of the party is over that age, then it's paedophilia. In which case, I really sincerely hope you are telling the parents that their kid is being nonced. Although guidance still recognises the legal age of consent is 16, thank God for that, and those aged 13 to 16 would still be committing an offence, it also states teenagers will not be automatically considered at risk of significant harm, reports the Mail of Sunday. It's just made it easier for nonces. We need another pedo gen. Instead, factors such as age or whether alcohol or drugs were involved will be considered. See, I don't understand here how, if age is being considered as to whether this is a risk of significant harm, how is that the case if you're not telling the parents if they're under 16 in a sexual relationship? Like, that clearly can't be considered. Like, you have to, you're obviously going to have to tell the parents if the child is being put under arrest or investigated. Whether there is a power imbalance, or what the hell does that mean, or whether grooming, bribing or coercion is involved will also be taken into account. Right, yet the whole point of age of consent is that those things are assumed, because you're obviously only going to be able to groom someone under the age of definitely 18, 16 even maybe a bit dubious, but obviously under 16 you must be groomed. There's no other way, because you are too young, or deemed to be too young, to know what safe and mutually respectful relationships are, basically, especially when it comes to sexual activity. The guidance says if sexual activity is taking place or has taken place within a safe and mutually respectful relationship, then confidentiality should generally be maintained, as there is a high threshold for when the duty of confidentiality should be outweighed. The facts and circumstances of each case must be carefully considered before deciding if the public interest favours the disclosure of confidential information. It's not public disclosure if you're just telling the parents. It adds information may lawfully be shared where there is an overriding interest which outweighs the duty of confidentiality. Overriding confidentiality must be justified and proportionate, taking into account the nature and probability of risk of the young person and or others. This sounds like it's trying to protect the nonces. I mean, really, I am basically trying to explain to you here that it is now Scottish guidance to not tell parents when their child is the victim of a crime. Because we've got to be open and tolerant in checks notes. Paedophilia, or a minor attracted person as they like to be called, but I refuse to call them. But I think this one's my favourite. The child's wishes and feelings must be heard and taken into account. The reasons for decision made, for instance in relation to information sharing, must be recorded. So basically, if a nonce, let's say, has groomed a child, do you think he's going to say, yeah, tell them the truth, tell them I groomed you? Or do you think he's going to say, right, when the police get you, say this, that or the other? You know, so say we're in a mutually beneficial relationship, because, you know, it took a while for the Catholic Church to be caught out by these things because the kids didn't say anything, and the kids lied, so they're obviously going to do the same thing here. No, if a child is caught being the victim of a crime or committing a crime like this, obviously tell the parents. It's ridiculous Scotland has gone this route. However, the Family Education Trust says that the rules now make the legal age of consent effectively 13. Piers Shepherd of the Trust told the MOS Mail on Sunday, this guidance, while acknowledging that the age of consent is 16, effectively ignores it in practice as long as it is taking place in a safe and mutually respectful relationship. It's effectively a charter for underage sex. The whole emphasis on confidentiality shows scant respect for parents who are principal legal guardians. If a young person under 16 is involved in sexual activity, it raises serious health and safety concerns. Parents are best placed to shield children from the harmful effects of underage sexual activity. Yes, completely agree. Keep pushing. A spokesman for the Catholic Church describes the guidance as morally bankrupt and said it entirely ignores the statutory protection given to children and should be revised immediately. He added, believing children are equipped to make moral judgments about how they behave sexually fundamentally undermines child protection. The sheer hypocrisy is highlighted by the fact that the Scottish Government requires applications for the new free bus travel card for young people to be made by a parent if the young person is under 16. Yes, that is a very good point. It's something that always comes up in the voting debates. It's like, oh, when you're 16 you can drive a car, so why can't I vote? Whereas obviously that's just using the same argument but reversing it. So you can't vote till you're over 16, so why should you be able to have sex if you're under 16? These arguments are all very well put, and they all make perfect sense, and of course, because of that, the Scottish Government is going to ignore it. The Scottish Government has defended the guidance, which is included in its 276-page National Guidance for Child Protection in Scotland 2021. A spokesman said, you've gendered the word, this non-statutory guidance does not conflict in any way with the Sexual Offences Scotland Act 2009, which maintains the age of consent at 16. But it does though. Because why aren't you telling parents that their kids are either committing crimes or the victims of one? The law continues to make clear that society does not encourage sexual intercourse in young people under 16. It does not, however, follow that there are child protection concerns in all cases. Overriding confidentiality must be justified and proportionate, taking into account the nature and probability of risk to the young person and/or others. The child's wishes and feelings must be heard and taken into account. Ridiculous comment. The Scottish Government's position is essentially, and the Scottish Government has been ridiculous with kids for a while, but it is essentially that whatever the kids say we have to follow now. Which is just ridiculous because it implies that the only relationship that matters from a child is a child to the state. Whereas what it should be is a child to the parents. The parents come above all. The parents are the legal guardians. It is the child's representative to the rest of the world in a sense. And yeah, the kids are obviously going to try and do stuff in secret, but it is not the government's job to keep a child's secrets, especially when it is something as potentially harmful as underage sex. But no, if a child wants to keep a secret, we've got to keep a secret. In Scotland, if you even lay a hand on a child to punish them in any way, that could be you off to jail as a parent. And let's be fair, sometimes kids need a small smack. Obviously, I'm not saying beat your kids. If you're beating your kid as a parent, yes, that is probably the one time it's okay to put that child into foster care. But if the kid is either committing or the victim of a crime, the fact you're not going to tell the parents about this, it's just ridiculous. I don't understand why Scotland keeps voting for the SNP. How hard is it to win an election against a party that you can easily paint as being the party for nonces? What is going on in Scotland? Someone in the comments, please tell me. But anyway, that's everything I had for you today. Please pray for the UK. We are in dire straits in more than one respect. And it's the clown decade, so things are only going to get worse. Anyway, as I said, that's everything I had for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.